Hey guys, it's Doc. And yes, the Fairway project is looking really good. We're going to talk about a little bit about that today, but mainly I'm going to talk to you about soil temperatures and the impact they have on your Bermuda grass, give you some cheat sheets. So hold on one sec. Hey guys, we're going to talk mainly about temperatures and how they impact your Bermuda grass. But I'm also going to talk a little bit later in the video, we're going to talk about fertilizers, NPK ratios, and I'm going to talk a little bit about professional grade fertilizers versus mass market fertilizers and why so many mass market fertilizers are so frustrating. We'll talk about winterizers and a few other things like that too. So we'll do both of those. Hey guys, I told you when I started this project, it would take 12 to 14 days for it to kind of look like a fairway. That was my best guess. And sure enough, so it's had exactly 14 days, and it's looking like a fairway. It's pretty solid. There aren't many bare spots. It's looking solid. And so what we did was, something you should not do, by the way, this late in the year, is I took it completely down to dirt. We scalped every inch of grass. We had really thick green Bermuda back here. So I took all that off, took it down to dirt. I put out a heavy coat of PGF Complete. Normally you put out a standard coat. I put out almost 1.5 times that, and then I put out Super Juice. And I've been watering it because we're in the middle of a 7-week drought almost. No rain for 7 weeks. And that's what I got. And this is how, now my background is golf course, and this is how golf courses can do this. Golf courses can look phenomenal even when they're in a drought situation. As long as they got the water, and a lot of them pump it from wells and so forth, groundwater. But as long as they got water and as long as they understand the basics of nutrition and growth and timing, they can have a nice fairway. I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I want to talk to you about temperatures real quick. And I'm going to give you some cheat sheets. By the way, if you have not signed up for our giveaways, I am giving away a $800 edger at the end of this month. And I'm giving away a $2,000 reel mooring for Christmas. And then in November, I'll give away something else. Be a subscriber, go to the email site and look for the email alerts, sign up for the email alerts. That's all you got to do, and you're signed up forever for all of our giveaways. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. We just do it for fun. But this information is going to tie into a couple of things. This is going to tie into the new 2020 Bermuda Grass calendar, and I'm going to be publishing a free book for all those people that are signed up for that email list. And this sort of guide to the world's best Bermuda lawn is going to show you just basic simple strategies. But I think really for you guys, the springtime, there's going to be a brand new program in this book for the spring, and we're going to do something completely different. We're going to do something completely different in the spring this year than normally you would ever do on Bermuda. And I've tested this, and one other person who is very good at Bermuda grass in the golf industry has done this. And we're going to have you do this procedure. So make sure you're on that email list. Again, that's going to be on the 2020 Bermuda grass calendar. It's going to be an interactive calendar. It's really cool. Really excited. And we'll have the new product out, a brand new product that Anderson's is helping us develop, which is going to really be a game changer in the industry. It's amazing. It's a fantastic product. Anyways, let's get back to temperatures. So here's what I'm going to put up for you: Bermuda grass and how the weather impacts it. So basically what happens is when you hit your 90s is the peak growth. That's your perfect, strong, high growth and energy zone. When you're in your 80s, that's moderate. So like now, I've basically gone into my 80s, and that's moderate growth. That's like early spring, late summer or early fall. Fall, typically that's what we're going to see. 70s is when we have slow growth. So early spring, 70s, or late fall, 70s, you have very slow growth. The next thing that comes into play is obviously when does the lawn sort of start to go to sleep? Well, when you hit your 60s, your temperatures and your 60s, that's actually when your Bermuda stops growing. There essentially is very little growth or very little energy in the 60s. Now, when daytime highs start to consistently drop below the 50s, that's when you're going to have your lawn go into dormancy. remember, when the daytime highs consistently drop below the 50s, you get that winter chill in, that's when your lawn goes into dormancy and it starts to turn brown. Okay, so one thing to remember is in the description below, I always put links to everything because everyone comments, where'd you get this, where'd you get that? So I always put links, a link to a web page where you can sign up for the giveaways, but you can also see on that web page, I list all the stuff I'm talking about. So if you need PGF Complete, if you need Super Juice, Pre Emergent, whatever, it's there. I'm probably not going to link to these things. I went to the kitchen and I robbed the kitchen. These are meat thermometers. This is a oven meat thermometer, and this is a digital grill thermometer. And I'm just going to test my soil temperature real quick. Okay, so let's just go over to a random spot over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in. I'm going to put my probe about 3 inches into the ground, 2 to 3 inches. It should come up at about 80 degrees is what I've been testing. So my soil temperature is still 80 degrees, and soil temperature at 80 degrees is actually good Bermuda growing weather. And you can see, what it's done. It's come back real nicely. So I have pretty good Bermuda establishment here. But even when I go over here, over into the shaded areas, I'm still about 79. So let's take one more reading over here. So one of the issues with this area over here is I have large pine trees. And later in the fall, what ends up happening is the sun normally crosses the sky like right across this way. Well, the sun is falling and it's going over here, and now what's happening is I'm getting a lot more shade over here. So this temperature should be a little bit lower, and it impacts the growth of the Bermuda. So let's just pick a random spot over here. We're gonna go in 3 inches. And let's see what it does. And it is 77 degrees. So this area over here gets a lot more shade, and it's 77 degrees. And it's 3 degrees lower than the other area. And my Bermuda growth over here is much slower. Not much slower, but a little bit slower. So why is soil temperature important this time of year? Soil temperature is important this time of year mainly because of the fact that we want to be talking about pre-emergence, and we don't want to put down our pre-emergent really till our soil temperature hits right about 70 degrees. Like I said, I've scalped this. This has had 2 weeks for weeds to grow up, for winter weeds to grow up. Nothing. I haven't put pre-emergent down since, springtime? So I don't have any weeds popping up whatsoever. None, zero, zilch. But they will probably poana. In Georgia, we say poana. But poana is my main concern over here, and that's going to start to germinate in the cooler temperatures. When my soil temperature is in that 70, 60s, and 50 degree range, that's when it wants to grow. Again, it's a cool season winter weed, and that's really what we're going to be targeting with our pre-emergent. So if I put down my pre-emergent now, I'm really kind of too early. Pre-emergent will last, 2 to 3 months maybe? So I really want to hold off on my pre-emergent as long as I can. I'll probably won't put any down till at least the end of October, if not sometime into November. Okay, so now that you kind of understand how the weather and how the temperatures actually impact your Bermuda grass, I want to talk about this time of year. We start to hear a lot of stuff about winterizers and starter fertilizers and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go over that real quick, just spend just a minute on that now. If your temperatures, I'm in Georgia, so my temperatures are in the anywhere from the 75 to the 85 degree range this time of year. If you haven't put down your PGF Complete, order PGF Complete and put a coat down. You still have time. If you have put down your granular base, now it's time to switch over to Super Juice, which is a very mild, short, non-long lasting supplement spray. So Super Juice is what I'll be using from here on out, nothing else on my lawn. I've already got my soil full of nutrients. Every week or every other week I'll come out and spray a little Super Juice. And the reason why we switched over to a supplement is we don't know when that frost is going to come in. Well, I can keep using my Super Juice on a weekly, bi-weekly basis until I know that frost is going to come in, and I just shut it off. It doesn't have any long-lasting effects. It's that very mild, very short-term supplement, and that's how we use the Super Juice. So Granular down. Hold off on the Pre Emergent for a while, but order it because it will run out of stock. I'm going to warn you. And then Super Juice. So let's talk about winterizers and kind of a couple of myths about them real quick. All right, so what have I got here? Basically, I've got NPK ratios is what I've got here. So this is what almost every single lawn in the world, and the majority of plants, a lot of your plants, want a basic NPK structure ratio almost all year long. Whether you test the actual plant tissue or you do soil testing and show the relationship of it, almost every single extension office is going to tell you the same thing. Every university testing. If you haven't done a soil test, without a soil test, a 4:1:2 ratio is basically your best ratio. So you have a 4, which is your nitrogen, you have a 1, which is your phosphorus, and you have a 2, which is your potassium. That's the ratio. This is the ratio that the majority of plants, including grasses, want to see. They want a 4:1:2. That's the ratio. So let me read you something, and I actually printed it off, and I'm going to grab it and read it. Okay, let's see if the eyes can read this real quick. This first quote is from a book about gardening myths. Really smart guy, and he's talking about adding phosphorus for root growth. It is true that so-called starter fertilizers and booster fertilizers are higher in phosphorus, but it is incorrect to promote the idea that adding extra phosphorus will foster root establishment. Most garden soil has a lot of phosphorus, in which case adding more does nothing except cause pollution. If enough is added, it will even become toxic to the fungi in the soil. Adding phosphorus does not promote root growth unless the soil has a deficiency. But that is true of any nutrient. If any nutrient is deficient and you add it, it will foster root growth. There is nothing magical about phosphorus. The next quote is from a real good researcher. I believe she's a PhD and works with extension offices. And this is from a long PDF article she wrote about additional phosphorus and root growth. And I'm just grabbing a short clip. When an element is limiting in a soil, plant growth slows. This phenomenon is called environmental dormancy. When the deficient element is added, the environmental constraint is lifted and the plant growth resumes at the normal rate if nothing else is limiting. Somehow, the observation of growth restoration was interpreted as growth stimulation, i.e., a growth rate greater than normal. And hence, fertilizers are often regarded as miraculous compounds. Just look at the name of some of them. And so that's basically what they're saying, is that there was a phosphorus deficiency in the soil. This is back in the 1950s. They started doing some of these studies, and they found that there was a phosphorus deficiency. So they added a higher phosphorus into their fertilizers, and oh my goodness, roots started growing. Well, that's because it was deficient in phosphorus. It wasn't that they added a whole bunch of phosphorus. It was the fact that now you had phosphorus in the soil, which is one of the limiting factors, 1, 2, and 3 or more. And once you add that back in, it helps promote the root growth. So I guess my point is, if you have a balanced soil, which is one of the reasons why we do a soil test, if your soil has a balance of 4, 1, and 2, you're going to have the best root growth that you can have. Adding a whole bunch of this will not promote extra root growth. All you're doing is possibly risking some toxic levels in your soil. We've seen that. There are some fertilizers out there that have a whole bunch of phosphorus, and you can start to get chlorosis, and you can start to get nutrient lockup if you have a lot of phosphorus. The same thing with overloading potassium. You don't want to overload any one of these. If you're going to overload anything, obviously you want to overload this one, because this is the most used nutrient in your lawn. So this is the right ratio of 4:1:2. Now a lot of people get confused and they say, well, why is PGF a 16:4:8 if 4:1:2 is the best? Because a ratio is a ratio. If you divide 16:4:8, if you divide it by 4, what do you get? It's 4:1:2. So 16:4:8 is a 4:1:2 ratio, by the way. Some people get confused on that. Now, Super Juice is a 712 because we wanted a little bit higher nitrogen in there, just for a little more green. And it also includes things like irons and micros and all that kind of stuff, the same with the PGF Complete. But I just wanted to go over the fact that adding a bunch of phosphorus to your lawn is not what you want to do. Adding a bunch of potassium for winterizers and so forth is not what you want to do. If you need to get a soil test, get a soil test, but the best overall fertilizer that you could be using is a balanced lawn fertilizer, which is a 4:1:2 ratio. That's what you're going to do. I never use a winterizer. I never use a starter fertilizer. The only thing I use is a 4:1:2. And I get my soil test done, and if my soil test says my soil is lacking in something, then I'll add that element or that nutrient to the soil. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, so I hope that explained it a little bit. Now, when you're thinking about which fertilizer to use, when you go to, and this is one of the reasons why I went to Anderson's and said, look, you guys have got to take your professional line of fertilizers and you've got to make them available to the public. And I want you to do it in a certain ratio, and I want it to contain certain things. So I basically, from the golf course industry, I went to them and I said, let's develop PGF Complete, because I want it in a 4:1:2 ratio. And that's the image I want you to remember. I want you to remember this image, 4:1:2. That's the overall image that we're going to remember for our lawns all the time, 4:1:2 ratio. Unfortunately, what you're going to see, like when you go to the big box stores, one of the reasons why they don't sell that is because they fall into, and Anderson's fell into this a couple years ago, and I spoke to John Pope about this. They fall into that, the broadest market category, which means that, okay, Florida has restrictions on when you can put out phosphorus. Maryland, New York, different states have different restrictions about whether you can use phosphorus or not. And so what they said was, well, let's just pull the phosphorus out of all of our fertilizers totally. And and so that's why when you go to the big box stores, 99% of what you see is going to be something like a 2905, because that allows them to take that one bag of product and sell it into every state. They didn't make it like that because it's the best way for your lawn. That's not the best ratio for your lawn. The best ratio for your lawn is a 4:1:2. The best marketing ratio has a 0 in the middle, because if you put anything but a 0 in the middle, you're going to cut out probably about 15 different states that don't allow the application of phosphorus. And you want a small amount of phosphorus. But most soils have phosphorus in them. You don't need add a whole bunch. Again, if you put down a whole bunch of phosphorus, you run the risk of locking up iron, locking up nutrients, and causing chlorosis in your lawn. Chlorosis is when your blades of grass turn yellow. Have you ever seen that? When you have a bunch of yellow-gray blades, you might have a high phosphorus. That's why at least once a year, go to your extension office or go online and get a soil test done. This year, I was a little bit low in phosphorus, actually. So I came out just and did a soil correction with a 10-10-10, a cheap 10-10-10 fertilizer from Lowe's or Home Depot. I threw it out this spring, and then from that point on, I used nothing but Super Juice for the first 4 months until PGF Complete was ready, and then we switched over to PGF Complete. Okay, so this is day number 3 of shooting this video. And today it's actually cloudy and it's 69 degrees right now. That's probably the high for today. So understanding temperature is important. Now let's go down the fall checklist. Number one is we're going to make sure you have down a balanced granular fertilizer. So if you don't have that out yet, you're still in the 70s, 80s, you can still put that out. Number 2, after that application is done, you can switch over to a spray supplement, and you can keep doing your spray supplement all the way until you start to see the frost temperatures coming, and then shut off. Stop doing that probably about a month before. You just want to go ahead and stop that. Number 3, make sure that you order your Pre Emergent. There's a link in the description below to it. Make sure that you order your Pre Emergent and have it on hand. Again, if you start to see weeds pop up, you can go ahead and put it down, or just simply wait until your soil temperature hits about 70 degrees. That's when we want to put it down. Now, number 4 As the cold weather starts to approach us, we're going to want to be, and because our grass is going to start to lose its growth energy, one thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to monitor where do we want our grass all winter long. So if we want 2-inch tall or 1.5-inch tall Bermuda grass, that means that we have to make sure that we've got it close to 1.5 inches before it stops growing. Number 5 is, if at all possible, try and use ethanol gas, ethanol free gas this time of year, because you never know when you're going to stop and put away equipment. So it's always good to have ethanol free gas in your gas tanks when you store them, and have some stay-bill. Also put some stay-bill when you finally get to the point that you want to do it. Now, I have seen the little bell housing that's on the bottom of these engines. I have seen those bell housings completely rust up. So it's important, if at all possible, look for some ethanol free gas, put a little stay-bill in it, and especially when you start to get towards the end of the year, that's one of the things you're going to want to do. And of course, number 6, make sure you sign up for the email alerts and subscribe so you don't miss the calendar and that new book that we're going to be putting up. That's about it, guys. Hope you learned something. Talk to you later. Bye.